Hello comrades and welcome back to Ushanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. My name is Sergei Sputnikov, although some people like to call me John Wayne Cheeseburger. And back in 1971, I was born in the USSR.
So she does laundry in the machine? Or do you think she doesn't do laundry for the other 9 months? Why are you talking shit about Ukraine and Russia? In all, Ukraine probably only one woman so washes, but you show as if so all Ukraine lives. You don't want to show the real good Ukrainian villagers with big, well-maintained houses, with roses under the window, with sidewalks, with foreign cars at the gate, with satellite dishes on the roofs. And you don't want to show magnificent Ukrainian cities? You!
Don't you love these comments? They're so passionate. It's like adding some spice to my bland, long and boring videos. Thanks again, Lisha from Finland, who's helping me on these comments. So today it's a little bit unusual video. I want you to show actual Soviet era housing. That's the building that I grew up, and my brother was kind enough to record this short video. So I want to kind of walk through this video, pause it, and comment and tell you those little silly details that usually most people don't pay attention or don't know anything about it. Anyone who is interested in life in the Soviet Union should know that the Soviet government spent a lot of money and effort building millions of affordable housing apartments. So there'll be multi-story apartment buildings, and they had different names. And when I say names, I mean nicknames. So for example, apartment buildings that were constructed during the Stalin era were called Stalinka or Stalinki. So those were kind of more fancy looking buildings and had taller ceilings, and usually considered that Stalinki were like the premium housing. Then during Nikita Khrushchev time, there was a huge push to improve life and living conditions of Soviet citizens. So they built just enormous amount of apartment buildings, and they got nicknamed Khrushchevka, and those were like really basic 3 or 5 story high apartment buildings. Then of course during the Brezhnev times, those were 9-story high or 16-story high apartments. They were larger apartments, I would say nicer apartments, and they got nicknamed Brezhnevki. Although during my days, I grew up in the Brezhnev-Era, we never called them Brezhnevki. They was just Novostroyki, new construction kind of word, Novostroyka, so that any of those buildings were built in late 70s, early 80s. Otherwise, now it's official nickname, Brezhnevka. So after spending first 5 years of my life in a dormitory, общежитие, as we say it in Russian, when we shared one room with another family, my parents managed to get an apartment in this building. This type of the building called Gostinka. So that was built around 1975-76. What's so special about this building, it's only one room apartment. There was nothing else. So it's kind of like a hotel type apartment building, because every room just like a small, almost like studio style apartment, tiny room, and then tiny kitchen and tiny bathroom. Of course, we didn't have air conditioning units, all new. But this is the building that I lived for about 4 or 5 years, Gostinka. And if you're new to my channel, I already explained all my housing history in a video called Soviet Mortgage, how my family struggled to get an apartment back in the Soviet Union. So please check that video out if you're new to my channel or you somehow missed it. So long story short, my parents had a choice of wait for 20 years to get an apartment, like 2-room apartment through my dad's job, or purchase so-called kooperativная kvartira, cooperative apartment, which we ended up doing. It was a 3-room apartment, and I think the cost was about 15,000 rubles. A lot of money for people who were making about 300 rubles per month. And here's the street view of my apartment building, and there's like 4 or 5 of them that look exactly the same. For people that just moved in or just came to visit, quite often they go into their own buildings because they're just like twins. It's the Koroleva 6, 8, 12, 14, and I think there's a 16. And as I said, exactly the same building. They're 9-story high. And each, entry door has 36 apartments there. So they call it Paradnaya. The grass looks a little bit overgrown, and you could see there's 4 people with the weed whackers. I guess they don't have push mowers, actually 5 people. They're taking care of the grass. So that some picture was taken sometimes in the middle of the summer. So they let the grass go knee-high, then they go with weed whackers and cut it down. So let's have another look at the satellite image of our building. That's a square bump on the roof of the building. It's so-called подъезд or paradnaya. So that's the entry door, and it has an elevator and stairs and 36 apartments. So our building had total of 9 those entry doors, so 9 подъезды, total of 324 apartments. And apartments were 2-room apartments or 3-room apartments. So, and it's kind of pretty large size, I mean, for the Soviet standard. And when I mentioned that we had several buildings that look exactly the same, there's like a satellite image from a further distance. So this is so-called жилой массив. So it's like a living development, I guess you can translate. And starting from the Zholodeva Street, that's the first one. So it goes 4, 6, mine was number 8, then was 12, 14, and 16 is almost identical, slightly shorter. So exactly same 9-story buildings in exactly same shape. So all this area pretty much was developed around 1978, 79. I think we moved in 1981. And there's some newer buildings were added. But most of this massive is 9-story high buildings, and used to be a village and a river and a lake. Everything got taken down. A river was buried underground, and they put this large area with a lot of buildings like that. Okay, so back to the video of my brother. So what I want to do, I will show you guys the whole this. It's a pretty short video, and this is how I always walked back to my apartment. Is walking this path into the arch and then into the door which leads to our apartment. So we'll watch the video just with the little music, no comment, and then we'll play it again, and I'll pause and I'll explain a lot of interesting details about this building and general lifestyle and how people used to live in the Brezhnevka apartment buildings and how it's different in modern days. Okay, so what do you think? Pretty rough neighborhood, I think you might say that. And actually this Yuzhnaya Borchegovka, southern Borchegovka area considers kind of like a, I don't know, would be an analogy like a maybe rednecks of the Soviet population, because it was mostly people who moved in there were like blue-collar workers. So like my family, you know, people who came from the villages, so they don't have a lot of city culture. So Yuzhnaya Borchegovka is like that. It's called kind of like a Soviet version of ghetto. Okay, so let's talk about it. First of all, you probably noticed, if you live in America or Western Europe, you notice this dirt path, so-called tropa or tropinka. In Ukrainian we say stezhka. And it's always kind of like, when you're a foreigner, you notice those right away. When I lived back home for years, there was like, I never even noticed. But this is actually tells you a lot about people who lived in the area. It actually tells you they're really good in math. Because it's obviously that if you look at triangle, you know, original design by the architect, you walked out of that arch and you go straight, then you turn left. There's a blacktop path for pedestrians. But of course, Soviet citizens knew if you walk on diagonal, on that longer side, we call it hypotenusa of triangle, you will save a couple of meters and you will save on wear and tear on your shoes. So in this case, the Soviet citizens will do the shortcut, and this is pretty much the new way that everyone is walking for years. You see, it's well-traveled path. No one bothers to use the blacktop road. that the architects design, they all choose the shortest way. But it was kind of really bizarre. After I lived in America for a while and I came home to visit, I think I didn't visit my family for 4 years in early 2000s. When I came home, this kind of what I saw, those dirt paths, they were bothering me so much. It's like they were like hurting my eyes, and of course grass and all that other stuff. But these paths were driving me nuts. Although before that, I know I lived in this apartment building from 1981 pretty much till 1999. So we're talking a lot of time, right? Many years. It never bothered me. I lived in America for only 4 years, and that was hurting my eyes. It was actually bothering me so much that I began taking photos of this path, and I call them Narodnaya Tropa, people's path. So, it's the most practical, the shortest way to walk between the buildings or towards the bus stop or train stop. So I began taking photos because it was just, I was like, why people do that? It looks so horrible, and of course, as I said, different topic is unmowed grass that no one mows often, and so it looks pretty bad. But those paths, that was annoyed me the most. The next interesting detail of these two balconies, they look quite different, and it tells you that no one actually cared about general look of the building. There was no architect, no get approval like, hey, can I build and paint gray color when everything else is this kind of white, off-white tile. But originally this building had balconies without any structures on it. So people added later on, it was called остеклить balkon, to glass up the balcony. So instead of open balcony, people will put this pretty much like wooden frame with windows, and you create kind of more cozy, almost like a summer room. And it also prevents, when people smoked on the upper balconies, they will throw the cigarette butts after they're done. Quite often we had fires because that cigarette butt, still smoldering, will fall in someone else's balcony below, and they had some materials like old newspapers or something else that can catch fire. So there was always a good idea to glass up your balcony, to build this kind of little room on the balcony. This way you keep the trash away, falling from above, and of course it prevents people from climbing into your apartment through your balcony. If you watched my video about Soviet-era cellars, a video called Exploring Soviet-Era Cellars, Potato Bunkers Built Like a Nuclear Shelter, I also mentioned that some people had cellars added to their balconies. So that second balcony, that gray color, that's what people did. You see, they expanded below, so there's a brick down there, and then they have a hole in their balcony floor to get down there, and that's what they use for storage, to store their potatoes. And another interesting detail, they got quite greedy. They actually expanded their balcony out quite a bit, probably looks, 3-4 feet out. So the whole thing, they just wanted extra room, and looks like no one minded. So they actually did quite an addition for their apartment, put in that balcony bottom, and as well as expanding the balcony itself. Alright, so as we walk closer to the building, there's another balcony. And this one is interesting because, first of all, people were aware of the general design of the building. So they found a matching tile, because it has kind of this like orangey brick color tile on the bottom of the building. So when they added a little basement to their balcony, they actually put similar tile around it so it matches, and then you see this vent hole, right? But what I find interesting, they didn't finish, like it's a one family balcony, that kind of long one, but the basement part, the cellar part, goes only halfway, and I'm not sure why they didn't do the whole length. It's kind of mystery. And further down behind those little trees, you could see how the normal balcony is just a long, empty, unused space. Another cute detail, so there's concrete panels laying on the floor. I can't tell you for sure why. The bottoms look like a decent shape panel, so I assume maybe the guy who was building that basement for his balcony, he was planning to use them for the rest of his balcony, but he gave up or quit, or maybe he passed away and the wife didn't care. The ones on the bottom, I think they belong on the right side of the picture. You see this gravel, so you have a black top and then gravel. Our building always had trouble with leaking water pipes. I talked about it one time ago. They put natural gas piping instead of hot water piping because that's the only piping they had, and they needed to finish building on time. So over the years, they of course rusted through. So we constantly had to, they had to stop water going to the building, find the leak, repair the pipes. So that gravel, that's the repair. They never bothered to put new blacktop, and some of those side blocks, concrete blocks, just stacked there, and I just left that way. And also I want to mention, you see that graffiti, we didn't have that during the Soviet days. You couldn't even buy so-called spray bottles, right? Those paint spray. Now it's plenty of them available, and you see a bunch of that ugly graffiti all over the buildings in Kiev. Okay, moving along, this yellow pipe is a natural gas line. So the people who lived on the first floor and wanted to enclose their balconies, it has the additional challenge. They had to cut around so the pipe can go through. Interesting architectural kind of detail, just run pipe like that exposed. Definitely don't want to run it in the inside of the building. In case of the leakage, you will have a natural gas and risk of explosion. In another moment, you see those parts that the tile is missing. I don't know why they went for that look to tile the entire building from outside. I think it's super stupid and super expensive. And of course, now this building about 50 years old, right? Something like that. No, 40 years old. So they've fallen off and break. They're probably not available anymore. So just ugly. I'm not sure what was the thinking behind it, because it's expensive solution to tile the whole building. It's a lot of labor, a lot of materials. Laying tiles is quite labor intensive, but that's how they did it. Okay, so here we walked in so-called arka, so the arch. So that's opening in the building, so it makes easier to, instead of walking all the way around the building, you just go shortcut under the building. That blue door on the right, that's the door going into the building's basement. That's what the whole hot water piping and everything else. It was always locked, and during the Soviet days and now, if you want to find some warm place to spend the night, if you're homeless, if you can break into that door, that's what the homeless people be hiding in the basements of buildings like that, because it had a lot of hot water piping. So that would be a comfortable place to spend the night. As I said, we had a lot of issue with the leaky pipes, so our basements were always wet, and there was a breeding ground for mosquitoes, so we always had a lot of mosquito issues in our area. And right in front of us, you see that repair area that they covered with the gravel and dirt, but never bothered to put the new pavement. So there's another interesting little detail, that cute or somewhat cute, and it's a handmade fence. It has some plants growing behind it. The main reason it exists is to stop people from making shortcut going into that building. So people made the fence and made people walk all the way around, because for years it was also a shortcut right under the windows of people. So that's what they did. They built a fence so it's not convenient to hop over, planted bushes just to prevent other comrades to make a shortcut here. Okay, so here we're almost out of the arka. So that's the area. If we turn right, there'll be the door going to my part of the building. And look at the cars. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of attacks on me from tankies that scream, look how much worse people's life became after collapse of the Soviet Union. I can tell you one thing, during the Soviet days, there was hardly any cars parked around our buildings, maybe like 5 cars or 6 cars for the whole building, which is 324 apartments. Now, these poor Ukrainians that hardly have any money to pay their bills, they don't know where to park their cars. You see, like any spot they can find, and they park their vehicles, like sleva on the left. You see that's the Škoda, that's a Volkswagen-owned brand from Czechoslovakia or Slovakia now. Straight ahead, that orange car is a Deu. assembled in Ukraine at ZAZ factory. I'm not sure what car is on the left, maybe Audi or maybe Mazda, I'm not sure. So nice looking cars, but the problem that Soviet design, Soviet architects, they didn't plan for so many cars for each apartment because not many people owned cars. So now people have a hard time finding a spot to park their cars. So on this picture I want to point out on two items. First of all, Korean cars. So on the right you see Hyundai and two Kias, and they look like quite new, nice vehicles. And straight ahead there's another pedestrian path. That one is made with the concrete blocks, as you see, and it's a drastic improvement because just several years ago they looked quite differently. So this is how it looked, I don't know, maybe 4 years before my brother took that video. And that's mostly due to the tree roots. You know, trees grew, roots got bigger, and they created this funky, almost like a earthquake was here path, and I was like that for years. Okay, so what you see here, that the great color wall, this is actually insulation added to the apartment wall, so people paid, so they replaced the windows. There's a more modern kind of, they call it Euro style windows. They better quality. The old Soviet windows just plain wood, and you know, wood shrinks, or if it's humid it swallows, so it's hard to open close windows. This is modern windows, and insulation was the concrete over it. Soviet buildings had a quite poor insulation. There was a gaps between panels because this is a home building constructed from concrete panels. So of course, where the seams come together over the years, you know, building shifts, and you have gaps and cold air come in. So this is what people do right now to the old apartment buildings. They pay to re-insulate from outside their apartments. Okay, so here's another example of added insulation. Quite possible neighbors hired the same company to do it because the colors really close and they kind of match the building. The other guy just picked the gray. I guess he didn't care. And the first floor, the air conditioning unit, we had no air conditioning during the Soviet days, like at all. So here they got air conditioning unit, and first floor they also added metal grating, I guess you can call it, on the window. Also not a Soviet thing. They're afraid that people will break in. So that's kind of started showing up on the first floor apartment buildings. People will put this metal reshotka, like a grating, to protect from thieves breaking in. And once again you see modern windows, and another example of a fine Soviet design. There's yellow natural gas pipe just running along the building. Couple of small details here you probably will start now recognizing. Once again, similar situation. So this guy worked somewhere at the factory that deal with metal, so he welded a metal fence, brought it back to home and installed. Same reason people used to shortcut walking out of our doors here in this building, turning sharp right and just walking right under the windows. So after many years of struggle, people added fence, planted some bushes. They insulated. So this is a 3-room apartment similar to mine. Mine is on the second floor, just like that. So first window to the right is a kitchen. Then you have like a living room, and balcony was the bedroom. They insulated everything. They also added metal grating on the windows. They didn't have it in the 80s during the Soviet days. And the door to the right, far right, that dark, it's a door, used to be where the trash will fall down from the central pipe where we used to dump trash. Now all that piping is welded, and people carry trash bags outside just like they do here in the West. So here's the entry to our paradnaya or подъезд. So the entry door to that stairs and elevator going to 36 apartments. So you see there's a number on the right, says 1-36, so it tells you. So this is paradnaya номер 1, so it's a first entry to this whole building, and apartments from 1 to 36 located if you enter through this door. And I'll talk in a minute about that door. It's brand new. And I'll talk in a minute about that fence and the bushes growing on the right. That's another cute little detail. So you already could tell that apartments on the right also were insulated, had the matching color and new windows. And fun fact, the blacktop, I mean, I don't know if it looks like blacktop, but believe me, that's the asphalt blacktop. It was coming all the way to the building. And what was happening, that's when people started buying cars. So after the Soviet Union went bye-bye in 1991, they were parking cars like right next to the under the windows. So that was annoying for people. You start the vehicle in the morning, it's quite noisy if the car right by your windows, especially in the summer when people have windows open. So in order to keep cars away, this person also welded this fence, and you see the bottom is made to contain soil. So he brought soil. So this is like a giant garden box built all the way along his apartment windows, and then he planted there, I'm not sure what's growing there, but just to keep the cars away from his windows. And then he put a little bench so people can sit and have a smoke. And this is the door in our paradne. Back in the Soviet days it was just a regular door, it was no lock, and the tile wasn't there, it was just a painted concrete. Sometimes, I'm not sure when, in early 2000, because they had issues, people breaking into apartments, they put money together and they installed this heavy-duty metal door. It's always locked now. If you let it go, it has a spring that automatically shuts it and locks, and then you have a keypad. So there's 3 ways you can enter, open this door. You can enter the apartment number and call the buzzer, just like you have here in American apartment buildings, and they will answer, and then they can unlock the door by pushing the button in the apartment. Or you can, okay, so 2 ways. I don't think there's actual, there is also should be a code that you punch the code and it unlocks the door. And also you have that little magnetic key. You just touch that little metal round circle on the bottom left of the keypad, and that unlocks the door. So now that's how you get into this paradne. Well, we finally made it to the end of this long and boring video about Brezhnev-Era apartment building, so-called Brezhnevka. Once again, it's a 9-story high apartment building with total of 324 apartments, so close to 1,000 people live in this building. And it's definitely needs some serious facelift or upgrade. I'm not sure what lifespan of such buildings. I believe probably around 100 years, then they need to be taken down. So they said it was built around 1980, give or take. So it's got its 40 years of its life, and it's looking pretty rough. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания, goodbye. By the way, cool merch for cool comrades is available at the Ushanka store at teespring.com. Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life and soul